Hello there.
Hi, Paul. Congratulations on this. It's been so far, such a fun show, and I think fans are really enjoying it. So it's been just great to see.
I sure
Uh,
hope so. Thanks.
my first question is, Marvel live action already has kind of such fantastical worlds and visuals and backgrounds, and yet it seems as though this show being animated has pushed the boundaries even more, in a few ways, especially like episode 4 coming up. Um, did you find that, it was kind of hard almost to go even bigger in the design or more fantastical, or did you try to kind of keep it right in line with what Marvel's done in the movies?
Um, there's two aspects of that. One, we have literally made some of our locations bigger. And that comes right from the director. It's like, we're going to do the collector's museum, but we're going to make it bigger. I want it to be literally larger. It's like, okay, we can do that. We just put more boxes in and just pull the camera back and do more scenes. Because that was from episode 2, the Benicio del Toro's lair, where in the movie it's literally just one room. It's all made up of those weird cases with all the the creatures in it. But so we just made it literally a larger location with more action and more rooms and stuff. And it's challenging just because it's more complex, but it's not what I would call difficult, other than just, it takes time. Probably the hardest thing to do is just to come up with an actual look and a style. So, you've got these live action sets, you know what they look like, but we're doing a spin on it. But I explained it to another person where it's no different than any other animated film where you come up with a style, because like we're walking around in the real world. Everything looks like a photograph because it's real. It's live action and it's realistic. Everything makes sense. Typical animation, and it's always the same. You come up with a style, whether it's a Warner Brothers, old school 2D animation style that's flat and with outlines, or, it's super realistic, like something Pixar would do, where it's, or a stylized reality and it's CG, but everything is lit with extremely realistic lighting. We knew we wanted an illustrated kind of 2D illustration style. But what that was, nobody really quite knew. There was the idea of this J.C. Leyendecker inspiration, and that really was where the characters began. And we started with that, but Leyendecker never really did environments in his illustrations. He mostly did characters and a few props. So we started with that, kind of looked at how he was handling things and kind of went from there. And it also, there is you got to do thousands and thousands of paintings to create a show like this. Because the backgrounds really it's like old school 2D animation. So you have to come up with a painting style that's going to be both realistic enough that it kind of fits in with the world, but loose enough and simplified enough that you can do all these paintings in the time schedule, and it kind of creates its own style.
Yeah. I interviewed, a couple of months ago, Kazra Farahani, the production designer for Loki.
Okay.
And he said that he said for him, probably the biggest challenge was recreating Asgard, but it was a different timeline. And so, because the challenge is it has to look like what we already know from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but just different enough, like slightly different.
Right.
Do you find that was also kind of, and you mentioned that,
Yeah, we have to do that too.
Yeah. And did you find that was kind of a challenge that?
Yeah. It's always a challenge. That's also part of the fun.
Yeah.
We have this incredible archive of all the stuff that's been done for the movies. Obviously we have the movies themselves. That's easy.
Yeah.
We in fact, we had a TV in our office that literally played them 24 hours a day, like just on a loop, just all the films. And we would all just kind of stop on our way to the bathroom or whatever and just kind of watch a little bit. And sometimes we'd actually study them. But we all have the movies on our computers. We watch them whenever we're doing an episode. We we really like study them. But we have all of the design work done for the films, done for the set design. We've got all the concept art. We've got the construction plans for how to build these things. And then what we end up doing to tweak them, it's usually as a way of simplifying them. Even though our like a lot of our what ifs don't really diverge so much that we need to like come up with some different version. Right. It's usually been like, yeah, we go to the Sanctum Sanctorum. It's the Sanctum Sanctorum. But because we also know we're going to have do paintings of them, we also need to simplify them down, because to put in all of that detail would be here till next century trying to do it. That in itself creates enough of a look that it almost comes prepackaged.
Yeah. Is that kind of when you use, I don't want to say cheats, because that feels like an unfair word,
Cheats are a good word.
But you have the Sanctum Sanctorum and the kind of iconic, that big, stain, or the big glass window on the stairs. But as a background, that's kind of a lot more simple than, for example, his room where he has all of the, kind of like the collector's room, where he has all the cases and all the boxes with all of his artifacts in it. Is the choice made to kind of focus on maybe the simplest part of a particular location? Is that something that's done often in animation?
Well, we'll focus on yes and no. The storyboards tend to come first, at least on our show they do. So they're not really thinking in those terms. They're thinking about, let's just tell this story. Right. They're not thinking of it in terms of like, hey, let's do a part that's simple so the art department doesn't kill themselves. But then when we get the shots, it's like, okay, well, they focused on the most complex part. Okay, let's figure out how to get this on screen and have it not be so complex that it doesn't kill us. For instance, the Collector's Museum. We have some moments where we actually use computer-generated boxes because there's no other way around it. We have some scenes where there's so many boxes out in the distance, like to try to draw all of them in perspective, it would be crazy. So we've come up with techniques for simplifying them. One of them is literally just take a square paintbrush and just spray square paintbrushes in Photoshop, and just create like a pattern. Yeah, it goes a lot simpler, and it ends up looking really nice because it becomes an illustrated version. It's more of a symbolic version of a place rather than the place itself.
Yeah, I imagine that would have been one of the hardest just kind of backgrounds, because it was just so intricate and there were so many different things.
Super complex.
I also imagine maybe too, the episode 4, some of the Doctor Strange sequences, were those challenging at all? Because they're so like abstract in a way that it's hard to kind of anchor them in any sort of
the abstract ones were really tricky. In fact, that was one of the hardest sequences, where he's kind of that weird hallucinating moment. That was a tricky one. But one of the actually more complex ones was where he's fighting him. He's in that room and he's pulling power from all the creatures. We thought it was going to be a real simple thing, because it's actually the same room that he comes in when he goes into that library. We just turned all the lights off.
Yeah, it's mostly just black background
too. It's mostly black background with a bunch of columns, but it turned out, because of the way the camera was working, that there would have been some like 60 or 70 different backgrounds, which would have been ridiculous for one location. And it's in the dark. So we had to come up with another way of doing it. We actually ended up doing like one just big black nothing. Yeah. Painting about 6 or 7 columns and just kind of moving them around to taste, depending on the shot. And it made it so you could have a kind of an infinite number of camera angles, but without having to actually do a bunch of different paintings. It was just moving pieces around. So you do end up coming up with all sorts of like just weird little technical tricks to make it through to the deadline.
And my last question is, just now that you've seen, kind of everything all complete, which is your favorite episode? Like, is there one that you really love more than any of the other ones?
I'm a big fan of the 3rd episode. I love the film noir kind of aspect of it. The whodunit thing. There's a cinematic quality to it that I really, really love. But each one has its thing. I love the historical aspect of the first one, going back into the Captain America world, and some of the episodes you haven't seen yet, you're going to get a kick out of, because we do all sorts of crazy stuff. Yeah. So they're fun too.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much, and congratulations again. I'm very excited to see the rest of the episodes.